The digital clock blinked 3:08 a.m. in quiet red. Naomi Carter stirred, her body sensing something before her mind could catch up. She reached across the bed, fingertips brushing only cool sheets. No Julian. She sat up slowly, the nightshirt clinging to her damp skin. The room was still, silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. She glanced toward the bathroom, door wide open, dark inside. Odd. Pulling her robe around her, Naomi stepped out of bed. Her slippers barely made a sound on the hallway floorboards. She passed Zara's door, pausing just long enough to hear her daughter's even breathing. Safe, asleep. She moved on. The house was quiet, that specific eerie kind of quiet that feels like it's hiding something. Then she heard it. A voice. Low, gentle, almost tender. Julian's voice. She paused, heartbeat beginning to drum louder in her ears. She inched closer to the kitchen entrance, the shadows around her thick and unmoving. I swear, baby. I'll fix it. She has no idea. Just hold on a little longer. Naomi didn't move. The words landed like stones thrown into the still water of her chest. Each ripple cracked something wider open. That voice, soft, coaxing, was once hers. That tone had once belonged to their daughter, to bedtime stories, to pillow talk whispered between shared dreams. But tonight, it wasn't meant for her. Her hand slowly reached toward the wall for support, missing it twice. She didn't go into the kitchen, didn't confront him, didn't ask. She didn't need to. Instead, she turned, quietly, carefully. She walked back down the hallway like a ghost retracing her own footstep. Her heart was pounding, but her face stayed blank, numb with knowing. She slid back into bed. The sheets were still warm where she'd been, but she was cold now, hollow. Her hand trembled so hard the mattress gently shifted beneath her, and in that stillness, Naomi Carter began to vanish. Naomi Carter used to be loud in the courtroom, the kind of litigator who knew how to break silence into weaponry. In heels and silk blouses, she could slice through arrogance with the arch of an eyebrow. People used to say she walked like she already knew the verdict. But that was years ago, a lifetime ago, it sometimes felt. Now, at 36, Naomi moves slower, softer, not from age, but from erosion. The kind that doesn't show up in wrinkles or scars, but in the way her hands linger too long on Zara's laundry pile, in how she sometimes forgets she used to be someone before she became a wife and a mother. She gave up the courtroom after Zara, after the pregnancy that nearly bled her into silence, after Julian sat beside her hospital bed with tired eyes and whispered, "Let's not do this again." She remembered nodding, even before he finished the sentence. They agreed she'd stay home, at first just for 6 months, then a year, then longer. The years blurred into routines. Mornings began with packed lunches and soft cereal bowls. Afternoons were pickups and ballet shoes and tiny scraped knees. Evenings were carefully set dinners. Naomi never served on mismatched plates. Candles, cloth napkins, everything plated just right. Naomi baked Zara's birthday cakes from scratch. She learned how to do fondant from YouTube. She planned every party with color-coded lists, down to the balloons. She remembered her own mother never doing that. And yet, despite the beauty, something inside Naomi had started to ache. A quiet hunger. Not for food, not for things, but for identity, for recognition, for a name that wasn't mommy or babe, for someone to look at her like she still had sharp edges. But in her home, sharp edges had become unwelcome. Julian Carter was the kind of man people admired from afar. Handsome, sharply dressed, tall with smooth skin and an expensive smile. He was the kind of man who made people sit up straighter. His friends called him a catch. His colleagues called him next in line. But Naomi, she saw beneath all that shine. She saw the way he flinched when Zara made too much noise at dinner. The way his eyes glazed over when Naomi brought up wanting to work again. The way he always kept his phone face down, as though the screen itself might betray him. Julian had once written her poems, once kissed the space between her eyebrows like it held magic. But lately he barely looked at her. When he did, it was like he was trying to remember something he'd misplaced. They had started fighting in fragments, not full arguments, just broken pieces, cold shoulders, long silences, sarcastic remarks disguised as jokes. Julian's words cut deep, but he always said them with a shrug. "You're tired, Naomi. Don't overthink everything. You always see drama where there's none." He was charming in public, the good husband, the doting father. At brunch, he kissed Zara's forehead like a politician, smiled at Naomi like he still meant it, and people bought it. Even Naomi sometimes bought it, until the mask slipped, until nights like the one at 3:08 a.m. Evelyn Carter, Naomi's mother, never liked Julian, not from the beginning. At their engagement dinner, she leaned in close to Naomi, eyes sharp behind her gold-rimmed glasses, and said, "A man can love you and still destroy you. Don't let love make you foolish." Naomi had laughed, dismissed it as her mother's classic cynicism. Evelyn had always been direct, blunt, the kind of woman who wore her truth like perfume, loud and unapologetic. When Naomi was young, she resented it. Now, she craved it. Evelyn had been widowed young, raised Naomi on a teacher's salary and backbone alone. She didn't know softness, but she knew clarity, and she had always seen right through Julian. But Naomi didn't want to listen back then. She was in love, a kind of love that made her feel chosen, special. She didn't realize then, being chosen isn't the same as being cherished. Their home was beautiful, in a curated way, not grand, not boastful, but thoughtful. White walls with gold accents, lemon and lavender always in the air. Naomi insisted on clean scents, fridge covered in Zara's drawings, a house with curly smoke, a stick-figure family. Mommy always had a big heart drawn around her. The kitchen had ceramic jars labelled tea, sugar, and hope, the last one a joke gift from Naomi's best friend, now barely in touch. Everything in the house spoke of a woman trying to build something perfect, trying to hold together what she once believed would last. Even the silence was clean. But lately, Naomi had started noticing small shifts. Julian stayed out later, smiled less, hugged her with only his arms, not his body. She noticed the way he angled his body away when she touched him, the way he sighed, quiet, tired, distant, when she asked simple things. "How was your day? Are you okay?" And then, there was the money. A few missing thousands here and there from their joint account. Julian waved it off. Work expenses, transfers, delays. But Naomi kept a ledger, quietly, privately, not because she didn't trust him, but because she had started trusting herself again. And her body, her gut, was screaming. It wasn't just the night at 3:08 a.m. It was the weeks and months before that. The build-up, the tension, the eyes that looked through her instead of at her. She was not naive. She was a woman on the edge of knowing, without proof, without confrontation, that her life was quietly crumbling. And yet, she still made dinner, still washed Zara's uniform, still lay beside a man who no longer reached for her, still prayed for a sign that maybe she was wrong, that maybe love could still be salvaged from silence. But Naomi knew something was broken, deeply, and once you taste that knowing, even a drop, you can never go back. Julian hummed as he scrambled eggs, his back to her, shoulders relaxed, as if nothing in the world could possibly be out of place. The sun spilled warm light across the kitchen tiles, glinting off the knife blade, the French press, the tiny ceramic mug Naomi always set out for him with care. A normal morning, a perfect morning, if you didn't know better. He turned briefly, pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, the way someone might pet a dog out of habit. "Morning, babe," he said, cheerful, breezy, not a single crack in his voice. Naomi smiled. At least, her mouth moved. She wasn't sure what her face was doing anymore. It had stopped consulting her emotions, weeks ago. "Morning?" she managed, voice caught in her throat. She watched him, not like a wife watches a husband, but like a witness watches a suspect. Every move calculated, catalogued. The eggs sizzled. He added a sprinkle of pepper. He even whistled. And for a moment, Naomi wondered if she had dreamed it. If maybe her mind, hungry and paranoid, had twisted shadows into sin. Maybe it wasn't his voice. Maybe it wasn't love she heard in that whisper. But then he reached for his phone on the counter, saw her watching, hesitated, and flipped it, screen down. That was enough. Later, the water in the shower hissed through the bathroom door. Julian's humming carried faintly over the tiles. Naomi stood in the hallway, barefoot, holding the family iPad. They'd bought it for Zara's homework and bedtime stories. But Julian had synced his phone to it once, months ago, when he needed to send an email and couldn't find his laptop. He'd never unsynced it. Her hands trembled as she tapped into the call logs. One missed call, late last night. Kiana M. The name stared at her like it knew her, like it pitied her. She tapped it. The The call connected in less than 2 rings. "Hey babe, that was fast. Miss me already?" Naomi froze. The voice was young, light, drowsy and unguarded. The kind of voice a woman uses when she thinks she's alone with a lover. No suspicion, no hesitation, just sweetness and sleep and intimacy. Naomi didn't say a word, didn't breathe. She ended the call. The tablet slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor, skidding across the kitchen tiles. She didn't hear it. Her knees gave out, and she found herself on the ground, palms flat against the cold ceramic, staring at the cupboard under the sink, like it might offer her comfort. She didn't cry, not yet. There was something worse than tears, the numbness, the kind of hollow that wraps itself around your spine and says, "You'll never be the same again." Because she knew this wasn't flirting, this wasn't misunderstanding. That voice had history in it, trust, long enough for pet names, long enough for promises. She was not the only one he whispered to. She sat there on the kitchen floor until the water in the shower stopped, until she heard him singing, low and content, as he stepped out, towel in hand. The nerve. He was probably thinking about breakfast, about his schedule, about Zara's piano recital this weekend. Naomi stood slowly, picked up the tablet, set it on the counter like it didn't just end her illusion. She didn't confront him. Not yet. There was a time when Naomi would have, immediately, fire in her bones, courtroom in her chest. But not now. Now, she wanted something deeper than rage. She wanted the truth, not speculation, not suspicion. She wanted facts, names, receipts, addresses, evidence. That same afternoon, after Julian left for work, Naomi made a call, not to Evelyn, not to a friend, to someone who wouldn't feed her platitude. She searched online, quietly, discreetly, and then she found the number. Private investigation, discretion, guaranteed. She dialed. A calm, male voice answered. "Hello?" Naomi's voice was steady when she spoke. "I need to know who my husband's sleeping with." There was a silence on the line. No shock, just understanding. "How soon can we meet?" he asked. Naomi glanced at the wall clock. Zara would be home in 3 hours. "Before 2, she said. Please, and just like that, the waiting ended. She would no longer wonder. She would no longer beg his affection or search for herself in cold eyes. Now, she would follow the facts, no matter how much they bled, because even if the truth shattered her life, she was ready to bleed if it meant finally seeing clearly. The private investigator slid the manila envelope across the table like it held nothing more than receipts. But Naomi knew. She could feel it in her chest, that steady low throb of inevitability. She opened it slowly, no rush. The damage was already done. Now, she just needed to see it. Inside, photos, dozens of them, dates, timestamps, reports. Julian, with her, Kiana. They walked out of a grocery store with 2 bags and 1 shared laugh. He reached into the passenger side of a black Lexus and brushed her hair back from her cheek before helping her into the car. One photo showed them inside a beach resort in Miami, Julian's conference weekend. He held Kiana's hand, her head resting on his shoulder, both of them barefoot by the pool. The PI's voice cut in, gentle and clinical. He's rented an apartment under a Shell LLC. The lease is in the name of a holding company he registered last year. It's clean, very smart. He visits Tuesdays and Fridays, sometimes Sundays if he says he's flying out again. She lives there part-time. Most of the neighbors think they're married. Married. That word caught Naomi in the throat. She flipped another photo. There was Julian at a small jazz bar, laughing into a cocktail. Kiana wore his jacket. His hand was on her thigh. "I'm sorry," the PI said. Naomi nodded, lips pressed tight. She didn't say much, just thanked him, slid the envelope back into her bag, and walked to her car like her bones were made of ash. She drove home on autopilot. When she walked through the door, Zara ran up, arms wide, eyes bright. "Mommy, look! I made a rainbow at school!" Naomi knelt down, hugged her so tightly the little girl squirmed. "I love your rainbow," she whispered. "It's perfect." But that night, when Zara was asleep, Naomi sat alone in the living room with the photos on the coffee table. She didn't cry. She just stared. It felt like watching her own funeral. This man, this life, was hers, or had been. And now it was being lived somewhere else, on someone else's couch, with someone else's laughter. She thought about calling her mother. Evelyn would know what to say. But Evelyn would also say, "I told you so." And right now, Naomi couldn't handle the truth echoing from someone else's mouth. So she didn't call. She put the pictures back in the envelope and slid them into a drawer under the old utility bills. The next few days passed in strange silence. She still cooked, still packed lunches, still folded laundry, and made polite conversation with the other schoolmoms at pickup. But inside, she was emptying out, one invisible thread at a time. Some nights she would put Zara to bed, then sit on the couch and stare at the wall until it blurred. Once, she opened the fridge and stood there so long the light timed out. Once, in the shower, Zara knocked gently on the glass and said, "Daddy." Naomi pressed her fist to her mouth and sobbed until the water ran cold. She began to lose track of the days. Sunday bled into Thursday. Morning blended into evening. And still, she told no one. Until the money. She noticed it on a Thursday morning. The joint account was short, very short. 2 large withdrawals in the past 6 weeks. Vague merchant codes. Business-related, but not traceable. She waited until after dinner to ask. Julian was pouring a drink, eyes on his phone. "Hey," she said casually. "Have you seen the balance lately? It's lower than I expected. Did you move something around?" His eyes didn't even lift from the screen. "It's fine. Business stuff." Naomi tried to keep her tone even. "It's just, that's our emergency savings. I didn't know we were—" He looked up, sharp. "Why are you watching the account all of a sudden?" "I'm not watching it," she said softly. "I just noticed." He set the glass down hard. "You don't make money, Naomi. You spend it. And now you're keeping tabs on me?" The words hit like fists, but she didn't flinch. She just stared at him. And for the first time in years, Naomi realized she didn't recognize the man standing in her kitchen. Not the way he squared his shoulders like he was preparing for war. Not the way his eyes darted away, shame or guilt. She couldn't tell. She could have fought back. She could have laid every photo on the table and demanded an explanation. But something inside her whispered, "No, not yet." So she turned, picked up Zara's drawings from the floor and said, "She's getting better at her colors." Julian didn't respond. He took his drink and walked out. Naomi stood there, alone again, with a man still living in the same house but already gone. The envelope was thinner this time. No more photos. No lengthy notes. Just 2 documents. The first was a short final report from the private investigator. Julian's visits to the apartment had become more frequent. Kiana had been spotted attending prenatal yoga. There were pharmacy receipts, doctor appointments, a name on a medical file, Carter, Kiana. The second was the sonogram, black and white, a small shape with a fluttering heart. Naomi didn't move for a long time. The clock in the kitchen ticked forward, past lunchtime, past the hour Zara was due home. She sat there in the same chair she had once nursed her daughter in, the same table where she cut sandwiches into stars, the same space where her life had once felt full. She placed the sonogram carefully back into the envelope, like it was made of glass. Then she stood, slowly, and went to pick up Zara. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Naomi smiled when Zara told her about a classmate who'd eaten glue. She made dinner, bathed her daughter, read the Gruffalo 3 times. At 7:42 p.m., Julian walked through the front door, smelled like cologne and faint stress. He smiled casually and said, "Long day," like the world hadn't just collapsed under the weight of his choices. Naomi was at the table, waiting. The envelope was open beside her. The sonogram, face up. Julian paused mid-step. She didn't shout. She didn't throw it at him. She just looked up, quiet, steady, unblinking. "You made another family," she said softly, "while I was folding your daughter's laundry." Julian's face twisted slightly, like he hadn't expected this moment to come, or had expected it differently. He exhaled, loud, defensive. "You stopped being you a long time ago, Naomi." She blinked slowly, the words settling over her skin like cold rain. And then she spoke, voice flat, not cruel, just final. "Number. I stopped being yours. You just didn't notice until I vanished." Julian's mouth opened, then closed. A man choking on the truth he thought would never surface. He looked down at the sonogram again, and Naomi saw something break across his face. Not regret, not remorse, just panic. She wasn't supposed to keep it, he muttered. Naomi stood up, calm, graceful, the kind of strength that grows after you've been broken open and are no longer afraid of what spills out. She reached over, picked up the envelope and tucked it back into the drawer. Then she turned to him with only one thing left to say. "If you leave tonight, don't come back." It was not a threat. It was a fact, a door, a line. Julian stood there for a few seconds too long. as if debating whether the life he'd wrecked was still worth fighting for. He didn't say a word. He picked up his keys, and he left. The door shut behind him, like a period at the end of a sentence that had dragged on too long. Zara padded into the room, rubbing her eyes. "Where's Daddy going?" she asked. Naomi knelt beside her, brushing back her curls. "Far," she whispered. For a while, Zara nodded, already drifting back towards sleep. And Naomi stood in that quiet, cracked-open house, a woman undone, but no longer afraid to face what's next. Naomi files for divorce. No long letter, no dramatic speech, just a signature on a paper that says, "I choose myself." The lawyer she hires used to be her rival in court, a younger woman who once lost a big case to Naomi and still remembers her with quiet awe. "You're still the sharpest," she says during their first meeting. Naomi doesn't flinch at the compliment. She doesn't smile either, just nods, like someone slowly putting the pieces of herself back where they belong. She starts therapy, not to fix herself. She was never broken, but to remember herself, to remember who she was before she became a beautiful fixture in someone else's life, before she learned how to whisper instead of roar. Every Monday at 10 a.m., Naomi sits in a blue chair and talks about everything she used to bury, about the way Julian used to praise her, then mock her, about how she disappeared while still being seen, about the moment she realized silence was more dangerous than rage. She begins to breathe again. After a session one morning, Naomi drives to the old law office where she once clerked. She takes the elevator up, heart hammering in her chest. Her former mentor, BIMBO Ademoye, opens the door herself, greyer now, but just as fierce. "Naomi," she says, and in that single name, there's no pity, only recognition. Naomi doesn't explain. She simply says, "I'm ready to work again." Miriam doesn't hesitate. She slides a contract across the table. "Start with this. We'll build from there." Naomi begins doing contract work from home. Zara colors beside her while she reviews non-disclosure clauses and drafts client briefs. Each sentence she writes is a stitch sewing her back into herself. Her mother Evelyn comes to stay for a month. She brings soup and scented oils and her unapologetic truths. She picks Zara up from school. She folds laundry while humming. She rubs Naomi's back when the sobs come late at night, the deep ones, the grief that doesn't ask for permission. One night, Naomi breaks down after hearing a song that used to play at their wedding. Evelyn finds her on the kitchen floor, knees pulled in. Evelyn crouches down, holds her, and says, "You're not starting over, you're starting you." And somehow, that difference matters more than anything. Weeks pass. The house feels different, lighter. Not because Julian is gone, but because Naomi is no longer erasing herself to make space for him. Then one afternoon he comes back. It's been 3 months. He looks thinner, hollow-eyed. The charm faded from his face like old paint. Naomi opens the door without surprise. She expected this. "Can I come in?" he asks. She doesn't answer that, just stands in the doorway, calm. He looks around, takes in the changed energy of the house. The plants are thriving again. Zara's laughter echoes down the hall. Kiana left, Julian finally admits. "She said I'm not who I said I was." He swallows hard. "I thought maybe we could talk." Naomi looks at him for a long moment, and then softly, "I loved you more than I loved myself." She steps closer, no hate in her eyes, just truth. "That's the last mistake I'll ever make in your name." He tries to reach for her hand, but she steps back. Then she closes the door and locks it. Inside, Zara runs up with a drawing in her hand. "It's you, Mommy," she says, beaming. "And me. And Grandma." Naomi kneels to take the picture. 3 stick figures, smiling, holding hands. The sun in the corner has a big, bold heart. Naomi frames it. She hangs it on the wall above her desk. A new life. Heron. 6 months later, the schoolyard bursts with laughter as children race toward waiting parents. Zara spots her and runs, arms wide, ponytail flying. Naomi crouches just in time to catch her, lifting her into the air and spinning her slowly. She holds her close, breathing in the warmth and safety of her little girl. That evening, after homework and bedtime stories, the house settles into silence. Naomi sits at the kitchen table alone, eating dinner under soft light. There's no noise, no tension, just the quiet hum of peace. Her laptop screen glows nearby. An email sits open, a full-time job offer, flexible hours, remote work, strong benefits, a return to herself on her own terms. She doesn't cry. She doesn't even smile big, just a small, quiet curve of the lips, like something deep inside her exhaled for the first time in years. She walks to the door, opens it, steps outside barefoot. The cool night air brushes her skin. The stars are faint but steady. She lifts her face toward the wind, lets it move through her, clean, calm, new.